Was he really surprised when she fired him? Or had some small, quiet part of him always known this day would come? My name is Daniel, and 2 years ago, I started paying attention to a woman who was never supposed to notice me back. Vivian Cross ran the whole company from the 40th floor. She wore steel like other people wore perfume. She walked into rooms and the air seemed to get a little colder. People called her the glacier behind her back. I never did. I saw something else. I saw a woman who worked past midnight because she had nowhere warmer to be, and I could never explain why that fact mattered so much to me. It started with coffee. Every morning, I ordered hers before she asked. Black, 1 sugar, never stirred too fast, because stirring it fast made the sugar dissolve wrong and she hated when it tasted uneven. I didn't know that because she told me. I knew it because I watched her set an unevenly stirred cup aside untouched, twice, before I finally understood what she needed without being told. She never said thank you. Not once, in 2 years. But she started showing up 4 minutes later than everyone else, every single morning. 4 minutes was exactly how long it took me to have her coffee ready and sitting on the corner of her desk. I never told anyone that detail. I kept it like a secret worth protecting, the way you protect the one soft thing in a hard place. From my desk to her office door, there were 11 steps. I know because I counted them every single day. I told myself it meant nothing, that I was just a man who liked numbers, who liked knowing distances the way some people like knowing facts about the weather. But some part of me was always counting the space between us, like it mattered exactly how close I could get without crossing a line I wasn't allowed to cross. Some nights I stood at my desk long after I should have gone home, just watching the light under her door, doing the math in my head. 11 steps. 11 steps was nothing. 11 steps was everything. She never smiled at work. Not really. Her smiles, when they came, were small and careful, like she was rationing them, like she only had so many to spend before she ran out. But some nights, after everyone else had gone home, she'd send me a text about a report I'd fixed. Just a few words. Nothing personal. And still, I'd read those messages twice before I let myself sleep, sitting on the edge of my bed in the dark, staring at my phone like it might say something more if I looked long enough. It never did. I told myself it was nothing. I told myself that a lot, actually, about her. I was getting worse and worse at believing my own excuses, but I kept making them anyway, because the alternative was admitting something I wasn't ready to admit. That Friday started like any other. Gray light through the office windows, the smell of burnt coffee from the machine nobody ever cleaned, the low hum of 40 people trying to look busier than they felt. I stayed late to fix a mistake that wasn't even mine. A coworker had rushed a client deck, gotten the numbers wrong in a way that would have embarrassed the whole department, and somehow my name ended up attached to it anyway, buried in the file history where nobody would bother to check. I didn't think much of it. I just fixed it, quietly, the way I always did, and figured it would blow over by Monday. I had no idea that somewhere above me, on a floor I never visited, a man in an expensive suit was already deciding that my name was the easiest one to sacrifice. At exactly 4:58 in the afternoon, she called me into her office. I remember the time because I'd been watching the clock all day, waiting for 5, hoping we'd get one more quiet moment before the weekend, one more small thing that felt like it belonged only to us. Instead, I walked in and found her already standing, tablet in hand, not looking at me. That should have told me something. She always looked at me. Even when she was cold, even when she was cutting someone apart in a meeting, she looked people in the eye. She wasn't looking at me now. "This isn't working out anymore," she said. 5 words. That's all it took. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't even really look at me. And somehow, that made it worse. If she'd yelled, I could have understood it. Yelling would have meant she felt something strong enough to lose control over. This was quiet. This was gentle. This was a woman who had clearly practiced saying something painful in the kindest way possible, so it would hurt less. It didn't work. It hurt more, the way a soft voice delivering bad news always hurts more than a loud one. "You know it wasn't me," I said. I wasn't asking. I already knew that she knew. I could see it in the tightness around her mouth, the way her fingers gripped the edge of the tablet a little too hard. She didn't answer that. She just told me, in the same flat, careful voice, to have my desk cleared by 5 o'clock. Like I was nobody. Like 2 years of 11 steps and 4 extra minutes and coffee made just right had never happened at all. Like she hadn't once, months ago, let me fix a strand of hair caught on her collar and let 3 whole seconds pass without pulling away. I packed my box in silence. My hands were steady, but my chest wasn't. I put my pens in first, then the small framed photo of my sister, then the mug I never used because I always drank whatever coffee was closest, usually hers, made just the way she liked it. Around me, the office had gone quiet in the way offices go quiet when everyone is pretending not to watch something painful happen to someone else. When I walked out, I made myself stop at her door one last time. I wanted to ask her why. I wanted her to look at me the way she used to, just for a second, before I disappeared from her life completely, before I became just another name in a folder she'd eventually forget. "Why now?" I asked. "Why today?" For 1/2 of 1 second, something cracked behind her eyes. Something that looked almost like fear, or maybe regret, or maybe both at once, tangled up so tightly I couldn't tell where one ended and the other began. Then it was gone, sealed back up tight, like it had never been there at all, like I had imagined the whole thing out of 2 years of wanting to see something that wasn't real. "Goodbye, Daniel," she said. I left the building without looking back. I didn't trust myself to look back. Outside, the sky had gone gray, and the first drops of rain were just starting to fall, cold against the back of my neck as I stood on the sidewalk holding a cardboard box that suddenly felt heavier than it should have. Cars moved past in a blur of headlights and wet pavement. I didn't know it yet, but somewhere behind me, alone in that glass office 40 floors above the street, she was staring at a message she'd started typing to me and never sent, her thumb hovering over the screen for a long time before she finally set the phone face down on her desk. I had no idea, walking home in that rain, soaked through by the time I reached my building, that this wasn't the end of anything. It was only the beginning. Because 4 hours later, at 9 o'clock that night, there would be a knock at my apartment door. And standing there, soaked to the skin, holding something that could destroy everything she'd built, would be the last person I ever expected to see again. If you've ever loved someone who hurt you to protect you, stay with me till the end. Because what happens next between us isn't something you'll forget. Subscribe now, and let's find out together why she really came looking for me that night. People think falling for someone happens in one big moment. It doesn't. It happens in 100 small ones, so quiet you don't notice them piling up until it's too late to walk away clean. I want to tell you about the version of Vivian Cross that nobody else in that building ever saw. Not the one who fired people without blinking. Not the one they called the glacier when they thought I wasn't listening. I want to tell you about the woman who kept a small stack of sticky notes in her top drawer, covered in her own handwriting, reminders for things nobody would guess she needed reminding of. Eat lunch. Call your sister back. Breathe. I only knew about the sticky notes because of one afternoon, months before the firing, when her drawer stuck and she asked me to fix it. I wasn't supposed to see inside. I did anyway, just for a second, before I closed it again and said nothing. I never told her that I saw. Some things you just carry quietly, because saying them out loud would make them belong to someone else too, and I wanted that piece of her to stay only mine, even if nothing else about her ever would. In meetings, she was untouchable. I watched her take apart a coworker's proposal once, piece by piece, without raising her voice a single time. She asked 3 questions, each one sharper than the last, and by the 3rd question, the man looked like he wanted the floor to open up and swallow him whole. Nobody in that room breathed too loud until it was over. I remember thinking, that's the version of her the whole company believes in. Cold. Sharp. Impossible to reach. And I remember thinking, right underneath that thought, that I knew a version of her nobody else did, and that knowledge felt like something worth protecting. I also remember the elevator ride right after that meeting, when it was just the two of us, the doors sliding shut, the numbers climbing slowly toward her floor. She let out a breath so tired it didn't match anything she'd just done. Her shoulders dropped, just slightly, just for a second, like she was finally allowed to put down something heavy now that no one else was watching. She caught me noticing. For 1 second, her guard dropped, just enough for me to see that taking people apart in meetings cost her something every single time, even when she made it look effortless. She put the wall back up before the doors even opened. By the time we stepped out, she was the glacier again, and I was just an analyst carrying a folder, and neither of us said a word about what had happened in between. Late at night, she was different. Not soft, exactly. But honest, in small doses, the way people are honest when they think no one is really listening. She'd text me about work long after everyone else had gone home, when the office had emptied out and the whole floor felt like it belonged only to whoever was still awake to claim it. Once, I fixed a mistake 3 other analysts had missed, a small thing buried deep in a spreadsheet that could have cost the company real money if it had gone unnoticed. She sent me a message at 11:47 that night. "You weren't just doing your job," it said. "Go to sleep, Daniel." I read it 4 times before I put my phone down. I told myself it meant nothing. I told myself a woman like her sent careful, measured messages to everyone who did good work, that this wasn't special, that I wasn't special. I was getting worse and worse at believing myself. Somewhere in the back of my mind, a quieter, more honest voice kept saying that no one else on that floor ever got a message like that from her, not once, not in 2 years, and that voice was getting harder and harder to ignore. There was one night, months before everything fell apart, that I think about more than any other. A server crashed right before a big presentation was due, and everyone else went home, tired and frustrated, leaving the mess for someone else to deal with in the morning. But she and I stayed. It was just the two of us, at 9 at night, with the whole floor dark around us except for her desk lamp, casting a small circle of amber light in an ocean of empty desks and quiet hallways. We worked side by side for almost 2 hours, fixing corrupted files, rebuilding slides from scratch, drinking coffee that had long gone cold. Somewhere in the middle of it, without saying anything, she took off her blazer and hung it over the back of her chair. It sounds small when I say it like that. It wasn't small. In 2 years, I had never once seen her without that blazer on, not in the office, not even on the hottest days of summer when everyone else had given up on looking professional. She rolled her sleeves up to her elbows, and for one strange minute, I forgot she was my boss. I just saw a woman who was tired enough to be honest, sitting close enough that I could smell sandalwood and something colder underneath it, like rain on stone. I asked her, gently, why she never let anyone get close. I don't know where I found the nerve. Maybe it was the late hour, or the quiet, or the fact that for once, there was no one else around to overhear either of us being human. She looked at me for a long moment before she answered, like she was deciding whether I deserved the truth, weighing it in her hands the way you weigh something fragile before deciding whether to hand it over. "My last partner learned every one of my weaknesses," she said. "Then he sold them for a seat on the board. So no. I don't do vulnerable anymore. I do controlled." "That's not the same as safe," I told her. She went quiet. The lamplight flickered slightly, or maybe I only imagined it did. When she spoke again, her voice was smaller than I'd ever heard it, smaller than anything I thought that voice could sound like. "It's the only version of safe I have left," she said. I didn't know what to say to that, so I didn't say anything. I just reached over and fixed a strand of hair that had come loose and caught on her collar. It was such a small thing. My fingers barely touched her skin, just a brush, gone almost as soon as it happened. But she let me. She didn't pull away. For 3 whole seconds, neither of us moved, and the whole office felt like it was holding its breath with us, like even the building itself understood that something was happening that neither of us was ready to name. Then she stood up, put her blazer back on, buttoning it slowly, deliberately, like she was putting on armor piece by piece. And just like that, the wall came back. We finished the work in silence. Neither of us ever mentioned it again. But I never forgot it. Not for one single day after. I carried those 3 seconds with me the way you carry a photograph you're not supposed to have, taking it out sometimes when no one's looking, just to remember it was real. There was another night, smaller than that one, that I still think about too. It was her birthday, though almost nobody in the office knew that. I only found out by accident, from a form she'd filled out months earlier for the company records. I didn't say anything to her about it. I didn't buy a card or make a scene, because I knew, somehow, that a woman who kept sticky notes reminding herself to eat lunch would not want attention drawn to a day that probably reminded her of people who weren't around anymore to celebrate it with her. I just left a small paper cup of tea on her desk instead of coffee that morning, the kind she'd once mentioned, offhand, months earlier, that her mother used to make. I never told her I remembered. She never asked how I knew. But she drank it slowly that day, longer than she usually let herself linger over anything, and once, when she thought I wasn't looking, I caught her staring at the empty cup like it meant something she didn't have words for. I never told anyone at work about these things. Not the sticky notes, not the tea, not the 3 seconds by her collar. I kept them the way you keep the only warm stones in a cold river, turning them over quietly in your hand when nobody else is around to see. I told myself, over and over, that none of it meant anything. That I was imagining a closeness that only existed in my head, built out of nothing but coffee orders and careful timing and a woman too tired to keep every wall standing every single hour of every single day. I told myself that a lot. I was wrong almost every time. If you were me in that moment, 3 seconds with her guard completely down, and then gone like it never happened, what would you have done? Would you have said something? Or would you have let her pull the wall back up, the way I did? Tell me in the comments. I want to know how far you would have pushed it, because some nights, I still wonder if I should have pushed harder, and I still don't have an answer that feels right. I didn't know it yet, but while I was falling for a woman who counted her safety in silence, a war was already starting 2 floors above both of our heads. It began with a rumor. Someone whispered the word merger in a hallway, and by the next morning, the whole building felt different. People spoke a little quieter. They watched each other a little longer before saying anything important, like every sentence might be the one that got repeated to the wrong person. Meetings that used to run 20 minutes started running an hour, with long silences in between the talking, the kind of silences that mean everyone is thinking the same worried thought and no one wants to say it first. I didn't understand yet how much that rumor had to do with me. There was a man on the board everyone just called the chairman. He wasn't around often, but when he was, the temperature in every room seemed to drop a few degrees. He had a way of looking at people like he was already deciding whether they were useful or disposable, and most people, if they were being honest with themselves, knew exactly which category they'd land in the moment he needed someone gone. He was looking for someone to blame for a discrepancy in the numbers, something small and technical that most people wouldn't even notice buried inside a much larger report. But he needed a name attached to it. An easy name. A name nobody important would fight for. He picked mine. I didn't know that yet. All I knew was that something had changed in Vivian. She stopped scheduling those quiet nights when it was just the 2 of us finishing work in the dark, the ones that had become, without either of us saying so, something I looked forward to more than I probably should have. She stopped meeting my eyes in the hallway the way she used to, quick and careful, like a secret only we shared, a small nod or a glance that meant nothing to anyone else but meant something to us. Now she looked past me, or through me, like I had already become someone she was preparing to lose. I told myself it was nothing. I had been telling myself that about her for 2 years, and I was getting tired of hearing my own voice lie to me, over and over, in the same patient tone, like it actually believed what it was saying. One afternoon, I caught her in the stairwell. It was empty, and colder than the rest of the building, all gray concrete and echoing footsteps, and for once, there was nowhere for either of us to hide behind a desk or a meeting or a closed office door. I finally said the thing I had been holding back for weeks, the thing that had been building in my chest every single day since she'd started pulling away. "You're not cold," I told her. "You're scared. There's a difference. And I think you already know which one you actually are." Her eyes went sharp, the way they did in every meeting where she took someone apart without raising her voice. For a second I thought she might actually do that to me, dismantle me the way she dismantled a bad proposal, piece by piece, until there was nothing left standing. "Careful, Daniel," she said, and her voice had an edge to it I hadn't heard directed at me before. "Careful of what?" I asked. "Careful of you finally being honest with me?" She didn't answer. She just looked at me for a long moment, her jaw tight, her hands curled slightly at her sides, like she was standing at the edge of something she wasn't ready to fall into. I could see the exact moment she decided not to answer, the way her whole posture shifted, closing itself off like a door swinging shut. Then she turned and walked back up the stairs, her heels echoing against the concrete, and I let her go, because I didn't know yet what she was trying to protect me from. What I didn't know was this. The chairman had already decided my name would be the one attached to the discrepancy. He was going to use it to push me out, publicly, in a way that would follow me for years, the kind of quiet professional ruin that shows up in background checks and whispered warnings long after the actual story is forgotten. Vivian found out before I did. She had one move left if she wanted to stop him from ruining me completely. She could fire me herself, quietly, quickly, before he had the chance to do it his way, in front of everyone, with my name dragged through every headline and every hallway conversation the company would ever have about it. It would look like her decision. Not his. And it would cost her the one good thing that had happened to her in years, the one person who still made her laugh in an elevator, the one person who noticed when her coffee order changed and never once asked why. She chose it anyway. I imagine her now, standing alone in that glass office, finger hovering over the intercom button that would call me in. I imagine the weight of what she was about to do settling into her chest, heavier than anything she'd carried in that building before, heavier than every hard decision she'd made in years of running that company without flinching. She wasn't choosing to hurt me. She was choosing to hurt herself, quietly, so that I would never have to know how close I'd come to losing everything, so that whatever anger I felt toward her would be easier to carry than the truth would have been. I didn't understand any of that yet. I only understood, standing outside her door a little while later, box in my arms, rain starting to fall outside the windows, that I had just been fired by the one person whose opinion had somehow become the only one I checked for first, every single day, without ever admitting why, even to myself. Ring that bell right now, because what happens in the next few minutes is the moment she has to decide. Protect her career, or protect him. And I promise you, once you see what she chooses, you will understand why nothing about this story is what it first looked like. I almost didn't answer the door. It was 9 o'clock, and the rain outside had turned into something heavier, something that rattled against my window like it was trying to get in, drumming against the glass in a steady, restless rhythm that matched the ache still sitting in my chest. I was still wearing the same clothes from that afternoon, still holding the same hollow feeling from being fired by the one person I never expected to lose. The apartment was quiet except for the rain and the low hum of my old refrigerator, a sound so familiar I usually didn't even notice it anymore. When the knock came, soft but steady, 3 careful taps, I almost let it go. I almost told myself it was nothing, just a neighbor, just noise. I was getting tired of telling myself that about her, and some tired, hopeful part of me already knew who it was before I even reached the door. I opened it anyway. Vivian Cross stood in my hallway, soaked to the skin, her hair down for the first time in 2 years of knowing her, dark strands sticking to her face and neck, water dripping steadily from the hem of her coat onto the floor. No umbrella. No driver waiting outside. Just a folder pressed against her chest like it was the only thing keeping her standing, her knuckles pale from how tightly she was holding it. She looked smaller than I had ever seen her. Or maybe I was finally letting myself see her at her actual size, instead of the size the whole company had built around her over the years, one closed door and one cold meeting at a time. "Can I come in?" she said. It wasn't really a question. Her voice was quiet, worn down, nothing like the voice that had fired me 8 hours earlier. I stepped back and let her through. She didn't wait to be asked twice. She walked into my small kitchen, water trailing behind her on the old wooden floor, and set the folder down on the counter, her hands trembling slightly, whether from the cold or something else, I couldn't tell yet. I grabbed a towel from the bathroom without thinking and handed it to her. She took it without a word, pressing it against her hair, her eyes fixed somewhere on the counter instead of on me. "This is everything," she said. "The real numbers. Proof you never touched the discrepancy. There's a man on my board who's been looking for someone easy to blame, and I let him believe it was you, right up until I couldn't stand doing it anymore. I should have given this to you weeks ago. I gave you a firing instead." I stared at the folder without opening it. Right then, it wasn't the proof I cared about. It was her, standing in my kitchen, dripping onto my floor, having driven through the rain to bring me the truth herself instead of hiding behind another cold email or another quiet dismissal. 2 years of watching her keep everyone at exactly 11 steps away, and here she was, standing close enough that I could hear her breathing. She looked around my apartment like she didn't know what to do with her hands, glancing at the small kitchen table, the mismatched chairs, the single lamp casting warm light across the room instead of the harsh fluorescent glow she was used to. Then, without asking, she sat down on my kitchen floor, her back against the cabinet, because there was nowhere else that didn't feel too formal for what was happening between us, nowhere that matched the way both of us had already stopped pretending to be anything other than exactly what we were. I sat down across from her, close enough that our knees almost touched. For a while, neither of us said anything at all. We just sat there, listening to the rain, letting the silence stretch out until it stopped feeling uncomfortable and started feeling like something else entirely. Then my old refrigerator let out its familiar hum, the same broken sound it had been making for years, a sound I usually didn't even hear anymore. Something about it made her laugh. A real laugh, small, surprised, escaping before she could stop it, one hand coming up to cover her mouth like she was startled by her own sound. In 2 years, I had never once heard that sound come out of her, not in a meeting, not in an elevator, not even in that quiet office at 9 at night with her blazer off and her guard half down. "I fired you to save you," she finally said, once the laugh had faded and her expression had gone serious again. "That's the whole humiliating truth. There's a man on my board who wanted to ruin your name in public, drag it through every meeting and every headline until there was nothing left of your reputation, and firing you myself was the only way I knew to stop him before he got the chance. I've been sitting outside your building for 40 minutes trying to decide if telling you this fixes anything, or if it just makes everything worse." "It doesn't fix it," I told her honestly. She flinched, just slightly, like she'd been expecting that, like she'd already rehearsed this conversation in her car and imagined exactly this response. "It's not supposed to fix it," I said, softer now. "It's supposed to be honest." "That's new, coming from you." She looked down at her hands for a long moment, turning the edge of the towel between her fingers. When she looked back up, her voice was quieter than I had ever heard it, quieter than that night by the elevator, quieter than the stairwell, quieter than anything I thought that voice could sound like. "I've counted the same 11 steps you have," she said. "Every single day, for 2 years. From my door to your desk and back again. I just never let myself admit why I was counting, because admitting it meant admitting I wanted something I didn't think I was allowed to have." Something in my chest loosened, like a held breath finally let go after being trapped there for 2 years without me even realizing it. "So don't leave at step 11 this time," I said. She didn't answer with words. She stayed exactly where she was, sitting on my kitchen floor in the low lamplight, both of us still half soaked from the rain, the storm still going outside my window, steady and unhurried now instead of angry. And for the first time since I had known her, she didn't reach for her armor. She didn't stand up, didn't smooth her hair back into place, didn't put the wall between us the way she always had before. She just stayed, her shoulder leaning slightly into mine, the folder forgotten on the counter above us, the rain outside the only sound in the whole quiet apartment. She had spent 2 years being the coldest person in every room she ever walked into. It took losing me, and a folder full of the truth, and 40 minutes sitting alone in a car in the rain, for her to finally walk into the one room where she didn't have to be cold anymore. If this story meant something to you, hit like right now, and tell me in the comments which moment got you the most. The coffee order she never thanked me for. The 11 steps we both counted in silence. Or the knock on my door at 9 o'clock, when she finally chose the truth over her armor. Subscribe, because the next story I tell you might be the one that breaks you in the best way. Thank you for staying with us until the very end.